Hello everyone and welcome to Computer Applications and Architectural Design. Today we're going to look at how to lay out a laser cut file. So we're going to build a quick model here. We're going to call it, we're going to create some layers and call it some curves and some surfaces. So for this one, why don't we rename our layer sort of object. And the second layer we're going to name dowels. And third layer we're going to name cut sheet. These refer to the object we're going to make, the structure of it, and the laser cut files that we're going to put on. So we can add some sublayers. So an object requires a surface, a poly surface, some curves, and lastly, contours. So starting with some curves, why don't we take a rectangle and let's copy this vertically. I'm going to create some curved scaffoldings. So I'm going to tween. I'm going to rotate this. And I want to skew it. And deform it. Let's pull this out. Okay, so let's tween these together. Tween curves. We'll do 4, do 3. Let's make sure that this is scaled appropriately. So let's do distance, 8 inches. So let's make sure that that's just a clean 8. So in order to do that, I can scale 1D. I make sure that my project is on. Objects to scale are these two. And I'm going to give it a reference point and then a desired length. So 8 inches. Great. So now I'm going to tween. And let's give it, that looks good. So somewhere in here, maybe these points, maybe they deform a little bit. Now I'm going to use these, I'm going to loft. Okay, let's make sure that my shaded view is working. Alright, so here's my object. My loft is going to be simply that. Say OK. This goes to my surface layer, change object layer, cap it. Alright, so that's my thing. I don't know if I quite like it though. Let me edit it. So I'm going to go to this becomes poly surface, change object layer. I'm going to edit it with cage edit. So I want to make bounding box a thing, and I'm going to enter through the remaining of them. Great. So let's take a look at these top ones. Let's make it a little more varied. So let's do a twist, and let's say something about these. I want to sort of make this sort of more deformed. The thing I'm not trying to do is have this fold in on itself. So I want to be very careful that that's not occurring. So I can edit, sort of pull some things out, give some thickness, but as I'm moving these around, I want to make sure that I'm not folding this object in on itself. Okay, so that looks good. I can delete my cage. Let's intersect this with an object. So here is on my solid tools, I've got a variety of shapes. Why don't we put it let's put a sphere in it. So we can go sphere. This sphere can move up, and it can sort of move out. Okay. Okay. So when I'm moving around, I want to make sure that my sphere is in a good spot. I can distort my sphere if I want using the same thing with cage edit, but at the moment that's fine for this example. So the next object is to make a Boolean union between these two shapes. So what this does is combines the two shapes. So to check, when I bring my clipping plane up, as I move this up, I don't have any overlapping volumes. So all of my cuts are going to be closed surfaces. So that's important. Okay, that sounds good. In plan, let's make my project on. I need to make some dowels. So in this case, I'm going to do square dowel, so 0.25 inch by 1/4 inch. And I want to make 2 of them. Select both of these. Extrude my curve. I'm going to pull it past my object so I know it pierces it. And I can delete those original curves. Make sure that this is on my polysurface layer. Now you can, with the dowels, it's up to you. If you know that you like the placement of them, like for example, I want to move this so I can just see it here. Let's move it back. Okay. So this sort of needs to be close there. All right, so I should be able to. Let's move one out so we can see it. So let's move one out. There we go. All right, so we want to see that pierce. Okay, so that sounds good. So there's sort of a variety of ways to do this, but the easiest way is to allow the dowels to go there. Let's actually mark these as dowels. Right click, change object layer to dowels. So the next thing is contour. So let's go here to contours. Select the objects you want to contour. Type in contour. So find a base point. It could be on your object. It can be anywhere out in space. And it needs a direction. So in this case, we're going in the Z. And we want to contour it based on the material thickness that we're going to be laser cutting. In this case, it's 1/16. And as we see, it is going out. It's important if you look up here that my group objects by contour plane is selected to be yes. That's very important because what that does is it makes sure that each of these is on their own plane. So for simplicity, why don't we pull these out and we can turn off our other objects just so we have our contours. So if I select something and I copy it just to check what's going on. So what's happening is this is all fine except for what's happening here. What's happening here is my dowels are not making a good connection. That's a problem. So I need to make sure that they all work. So in this case, let's turn my polysurface back on, my dowels back on. So I can't have intersecting curves. I need to be able to make sure to be able to make a clean surface. So I'm going to use the Boolean difference to cut holes for my dowels in my object. So in order to do that, I can right click on my Boolean here, or I can go to Solid Tools, and I can find the Boolean difference in this command. So it asks me for polysurfaces to subtract from, which is my object, and I hit enter. And my cutting objects, what do I want to subtract with? Those are my dowels, so I hit enter again. Okay, so I can hide my dowels, and here we can see that it is in fact pierced. Great. So let's do contour again. Make sure I'm on my contour. So this object is polysurface, change object layer, polysurface. Perfect. And contour. So a base point, again, it could be anywhere in space. All it's asking for is a vector. So we want to show it in the z direction. And now it's asking for the distance between them, 1/16. And I want to make sure that my group objects by contour plane is on. My join curves by contour plane is correct. I say OK. And here it is. It's cutting up my objects. Great. Let's pull these out and let's hide our polysurface and let's take a look. So here I don't see any overlapping curves. That's fantastic. So the next thing to do is to make sure, just sort of take a quick look, see if there's anything amiss. Make sure that I'm in parallel to the right axes, that I don't have any misalignments with how I made my contours. Okay, that looks good, that looks good. Let's now go to turn surface on, go to surface, and we're going to use these contours to create surfaces. So you can select your contours, go here to your surface toolbar, and surfaces from planar curves. You can also find this under the surfaces tab from planar curves. Great. So if this is unshaded, here we can see that our groups of curves have been converted into contours. So if I turn my view on, that works. If I turn this view on, I should still see lines. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I'll do shaded in all these views. Okay, fantastic. So this is what my model is going to look like. The next thing I want to do is start laying out my cut sheets. So in order to do this, I go into my cut sheet layer, and let's make a few groups here. So this is going to be cut. This is going to be score. Okay, so turn this on. Cut and score are two different colors. Make sure those correspond to the correct colors. Let's lay out our sheets now. So in order to do that, I'm going to make a rectangle. And however big my material that I'm going to be cutting from is how big this is going to be. So say it's 32 inches by 18 inches. Then I lay out my sheet like this. We need one more thing in here. In order to organize our contours on this sheet, I need a point grid to help me move things and help me organize where my objects are going to be. So in order to do that, I'm going to say new layer, and I'm going to say points. Okay, let's go here. Let's make this a color that I can understand. We'll say blue. Okay. Now I want to make a point, an array of points. So over here I do single point, or I can type in the word point. There's that dot and that point. why don't we array these? So we need to kind of get an idea of spacing first. So how big is my object? So to do that, I can measure it with a command called distance. I want to make sure my project is on, and let's find how big my object is. So from here to here is 6 inches. From here going across, and if I hit tab here, see how I can lock my direction? So that's really useful. Okay, so that's again close to 6 inches. So imagine that this is in the center. There's going to be sort of 6 inches around each of these points. So the difference between each point, right, so it would be 3 plus 3 should be 6. And in this case, to give it a little space, we'll do 6.25. So let's do array, let's do 6 by 4, and we said it was 6.25 inches, and 6.25 inches. Fantastic. Okay. So you'll notice that some of my points are in fact off. Fine. So in order to change that, I just clean up my margins. So let's take these objects and let's array these now. So let's do 5 and 2. Give them a little bit of a spacing here. Okay, so let's use our text, our score to mark our boards. So text, I want to say sheet 1. Okay. Sheet 1 is there. Let's do the same thing. Text sheet 2. Sheet 3. Sheet 4. By the way, what I'm doing is Rhino automatically records the last command that you entered. So instead of having to retype the same command, you can just press enter and it will repeat the same one. So I think we're on 5 here. Sheet 6. Sheet 7. Sheet 8. Okay, let's make sure that this follows suit. So sheet 1. Okay, cool. So I should have a